Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenheimer.
And we're back. It's been 2 weeks since the last episode. Sorry for the break. Unfortunately, I got the virus. It kind of ruled everything out. No, it wasn't monkeypox. Finally, COVID caught up with me, so kind of laid me a little bit low. So we didn't have a show last week whilst I was recovering.
And I stayed away from the show because I had it before you.
Yes.
Or I allegedly had it because I never tested for it. I never tested it for it. My wife tested
negative.
My wife tested and she tested negative.
Well, see, this is the weird thing because I tested positive right away when I did the test. So then Caitlin was feeling okay, but then 2 days later started to feel terrible. So she's tested a couple of times now. She's had it worse than me, but she's still testing negative.
Maybe it's a male bias test.
No, in my house, I never tested positive even when I was not feeling well. And then a while later, my wife finally got it, and thank goodness she no major issues long term for her, but so far. But it's weird. Like I felt awful for that whole like a week, but never. I tested 2 or 3 times, never got the positive.
So weird.
So it could be. I've heard it could be just the at-home rapid tests are not as.
They're not that accurate. The thing with Caitlin though is like she's lost her smell and she's lost her sense of taste, which people have told her since she started going out with me that she's kind of lost her taste, but she genuinely has lost both taste and smell.
I didn't at all.
I didn't either.
But people have said that. People have said that it's not everybody that gets it loses it, especially with the new stuff.
I think it's only like 13% of folk now. So unlucky for some, obviously unlucky for her. I think I've pinpointed down where I got it from. It was from one of 2 things I had gone to, and one of them was a concert. And obviously I'm now celebrating that fact by making one of the bands I saw our Artist of the Month, our new Artist of the Month. So they'll be coming up in parts 2 or 3, but I'm still a little bit under the weather. My voice still hasn't fully recovered. Fatigue has been my biggest thing. I've been like wiped out. If I go and do anything like any of the League One commentary, I come back, I just crash out. So hopefully I make it to the end of this show. I mean, thankfully, it's been a quiet couple of weeks with nothing to talk about. So, I mean, it's clearly just going to be a short show for us to get through. No big talking points at all, I think. Because Zach and me had actually recorded an extra podcast the night that we brought out the last AFTN Soccer Show, which was going to be about the Canada-Iran game and looking at the squad for these 2 matches. And that has never seen the light of day, although I still should probably salvage something about our squad chat that I had and bring that out before the game on Thursday. But that was the start of the debacle that has kind of unfolded in the last week and a bit. So we're going to obviously talk about Canada, the farce surrounding that in the first 2 parts. Part 3, we'll talk about Whitecaps as well. But let's just get straight into it. Because Sunday, was the cherry on top of the shit cake that has been the last 10 to 14 days for the Canadian national team coming home to Vancouver, because we like to think of Vancouver as the national team home. Wow. First of all, there was the Iran backlash, and then that game got cancelled after they backed down and pulled it. Then there was a search for the late replacement. They finally found one. If they'd just waited a little bit longer, they could possibly have got Scotland. But then they got that replacement, and then that game did not take place, called off against Panama 2 hours before the game was meant to go on. Then there was a car crash of a press conference by Canada Soccer after it. So much to delve into. We'll get into all the ins and outs, but Steve, what were your thoughts on Sunday by the time that game was finally called off?
Very frustration. The frustration was so high because the fact that the way it broke down, and first of all, I'm going to start off by saying that I don't trust Canada Soccer, and I think that organization has been in a dire need of a rehaul from top to bottom for a number of years, all the way back from when Jason DeVos and I can't remember who was the other player. The one that was injured all the time, but like almost on the same level with Christine Sinclair.
Jason Bent?
No. Female.
Oh, Carl Lang.
Carl Lang, yeah.
Oh,
and yes. they were secretly tweeting stuff about the meetings and stuff because it was like there wasn't an open conference or something like that. All the way back from there, you just knew the stuff was like not all right up there at the top, and like. So starting off with that I don't trust them at all, but I was kind of more upset at the players only because going back from way back when, I've always felt like if you're going to represent the nation, you don't like walk out on the nation. That's just my basic feeling. And they probably are right in what they're saying. But my whole thing was like, it's just that what they're walking out of the game. Not only does it hurt, obviously, that day, the people are coming to watch the game, it hurts them. But it's going to put a black eye on people that were just going to show up, the fringe fans. And it's also people that were at home and not planning on maybe watching the game on TV, but hearing about this, maybe that puts them completely off soccer. The fact that your national team just didn't play.
Yeah, for me, a lot of fault on both sides around the circumstances on Sunday, and a lot of fault just on Canada Soccer all round for the build up to many things. And as you say, Steve, it's needed an overhaul for years. It's felt for a while that Canada Soccer has not been fit for purpose, and it kind of feels a little bit stuck in the past, Zach, and hasn't maybe moved with the times. And we'll get into a lot of all the ins and outs, but how were you feeling on Sunday? Because you were going to be heading to the game.
There are so many layers to this. That is, yeah, it might be hard to break them all down on this one show, but I think the first thing is, as much as we think we know all the things we need to know about this, there's a lot about this that obviously we don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a number of key details, and I think a lot of perspective that we don't yet have, and we might never have. So I think all my comments and all my perspectives are based on limited information. So I guess I reserve the right to alter them later.
I mean, that's very fair, because it's like everyone's calling for transparency just now. Whether we ever get that to the level that we all want it, I don't know.
I mean, this might sound bad, but when you answering your specific question, Michael, I was kind of relieved that
because you were coming in from Hope, so it saved you a long trip.
I was working. Well, yeah, not just saving the trip, but there was just the stuff from the like the residual from the Iran game and the massive letdown. I mean, I know Michael, you and I talked about it a little bit, but like, I guess my perspective is now on it is like, I never felt it was like the best decision to begin with, but I'm happy for the families that were impacted by the tragedy, that that the game didn't happen. On a sporting level, obviously, I feel for the players and the coaches, and on a supporter level, a fan level, I feel a little bit. It was just like a letdown going from putting the circumstances of Iran to the side. It was just a letdown going from like a 50 plus thousand, sellout ish type game to what was going to be like 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And so it was like going to the game, I was like, oh, this is not going to be like this section, the Voyager section's not going to be quite like what it was going to be, right? And so when I started getting all these messages from people as I was driving home, and I finally got home and looked at my phone, and I was like, oh, okay, my afternoon is a little less traffic filled, and I can go and relax with my family after working all weekend. I felt a little bit relieved in one sense, but also sad and disappointed when it comes to the Canadian Soccer Association and this group of players. I think that the CSA, like historically, yes, the CSA has, from a supporter's perspective, not been always run very well, and doesn't always have, or has not ever, I think, fully had the right mix of football people in there. Like I know Brittany's there now and stuff, but it still feels like it's missing more. When you look at when you look at some of the federations at other parts of the world, you see how so many of the players are involved at the national team level and involved with the federations or whatever, and playing key roles and making sure that perspective of the high performance athletes are in the foreground. But the CSA has made a lot of decisions over the years that have been frustrating, and this week I've had lots of opportunities to listen to former players talk about how, various points of frustration or disappointments or letdowns over the years. So the CSA historically, I think, has issues. I think I also agree with Steve that I really love this group of players. So what I'm about to say is kind of hard to say, but I am disappointed, and I'm not disappointed because I missed out on going to a game. That I don't care. Like my personal, life plans being changed are insignificant in terms of this conversation. It's more the mixed messages that was in their message, right? The whole like, where's the money? But we do this for the fans. There were some mixed messages to me in their letter. And I think their approach of going public, I realized why they did it. I realized they were leveraging all that they could. I understand that. I think though and maybe as I know more, this will change, but in the moment, I'm just disappointed how they've played a role also in tarnishing what is supposed to be the most special time in our country's history for football. I want to say something about the CSA now, though.
Sure.
And this, I think some people are saying this, but I think as many times as they've made poor decisions, I don't actually fault them for the decision they made in regards to Canadian soccer business and the Canadian Premier League. When you look what they did in 2018, 2019, they basically created guaranteed revenues from something that used to cost them money. We'll
get into the CSP bit.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah,
but
later
so
on.
I don't fully fault them for how they handled that part. But so in one sense it feels weird to say this, but still in this moment, I think my bigger concern with what happened in the last week is with the players.
I was quite angry with the players. I mean, I wasn't able to go to the game, so it didn't put me up nor down because I was commentating, so I was having to miss it anyway. But just, I felt it was very disrespectful to fans that had travelled, folk on my Facebook and my other social media, friends, acquaintances that had travelled from the island in the morning and they got on a ferry not knowing if they were going to see a game or not. I've heard stories of people that's come from the Yukon, from Alberta, that's come from out east. To call it off that late in the day, absolutely disrespectful. We'll get into the cancellation shortly. I want to dial it back to that Iran decision first of all, because we haven't talked about it on the show. And as I mentioned, Zach and we had recorded a podcast where we did talk about the decision to play Iran, and my famous words that no one will hear from that podcast there's no way they're going to cancel it this late in the day. Yeah. And then less than 12 hours after recording that, Steve, they cancelled it. So let's get your thoughts on that whole scenario from start to finish. So they picked Iran because it's helping America, because America's going to play them in the World Cup, whilst America played Morocco, who Canada is going to play in the World Cup. So it's a kind of helping each other out scenario. But they were also getting quality, world-class quality opposition, top 30 in the world team. And it was going to be a good test, a good World Cup prep. For the first week or so, nothing was really said about it. There's a couple of dissenting voices about the obviously plane tragedy and the folk that lost loved ones when it was shot down. But then it started to gain momentum, and then the politicians jumped on it, and then the bandwagon started. I
think it started with a question to Trudeau. That's when it started. And
yes.
He didn't know too much about it, and he said, yeah, I'd be concerned about that. For me, the biggest issue was that now, from what FIFA tells us, is that the government is not supposed to be involved in soccer federations.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then why is the Soccer Federation of Iran being singled out? Like, are people making association with them? I didn't follow the full story, what people were saying, because I really don't care usually what people say. So I like the thing is, it seems like people were saying that the government is funding the Iran soccer, which Canada is too, obviously, but they're not associated. So the thing is, I'm sure, and I think I heard this on the radio somewhere, somebody mentioning it out east or whatever, that people there's been, artists from Iran that are performing in Canada, and other things that are happening in Canada that are Iranian or whatever. So the thing is these players, that Iranian players, have nothing to do with the government. The coaches should have nothing to do with the government. Maybe the people high up, they have to talk to the government. But overall, this is not, like, for me, the cancellation should not have happened. I understand that people lost loved ones and everything like that. But there's a lot of other things that have happened in the past where people, have lost and the games go on and stuff like that. So for me, the people associating the Iran soccer team to the government, that was off base for me. So that's why, for me, it was odd to me that it was cancelled.
It's a slippery slope, I feel, when you start saying we're not going to play that country for that reason. And some people I saw on Twitter, some people tagged me in conversations about this on Twitter saying, oh, well, but it's fine if they don't play Russia. And it's like, yeah, Russia is in an illegal war at the moment. We're not at war with Iran. Yeah. And yeah, there was a tragedy and it was a terrible thing and no one's been brought to justice for it. And maybe I would feel different if it was one of my...
No, I don't know if they have any like those embargoes or whatever, those things. I didn't even check to see if they have that. Maybe if they have that, that's fine. Then maybe you can do that kind of stuff.
I mean, there's sanctions against Iran that all the G8 countries and stuff are doing. But it's for me, you do have to separate sport, because what happens if in 2026 Iran have qualified for the World Cup?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're drawn in Canadian groups. Are you going to not let them come into the country?
Yeah,
so for me, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, for me, it was there wasn't a direct correlation between the government and and that's who's obviously people are accusing of taking down the plane and everything like that, and the actual federation.
There had been some folks saying that the Revolutionary Guard would be travelling with them, and obviously they're thought of as in many countries as a terrorist organisation and everything like that. But
if that's the case, then you cancel it for sure.
Yeah,
then you don't offer the visas.
The visas may or may not have even been approved. We don't know because nobody seemed to know. But this is one of the transparency things, Zach. Nobody still knows who invited Iran in the first place. And at Nick Bontis's press conference on Sunday, someone mentioned about Iran, and he's like, oh, well, we've covered that, and that matter's closed now. And it's like, it's not. You have never sat down in front of the media and talked about the decision, A, to invite them, B, how it all played out, and C, to cancel it. That's never been addressed, whereas Canada Soccer seems to think they have addressed that. Now, I know we obviously did talk about it on this extra podcast, but no one's heard our thoughts. So what is your thoughts on the whole thing with this, around this match? Should it have been cancelled?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the disappointing elements in the Nick Bontis, Earl Cochrane press conference.
One of many for me.
I actually think if you want to have issues with the CSA, and again, we don't know anything, but from things that I've heard, is that Iran was not the ideal opponent. It was kind of more like a secondary choice who, one, was going to the World Cup, two, was a better quality than, playing someone from CONCACAF again, and three, would sell lots of tickets.
Yes, which it most certainly did.
Yeah. So, but the thing I'm frustrated at is supposedly talks broke down with Tunisia, and this is not verified information. So yes, this is speculation or, based on hearsay or based on other people. But my understanding is, the Iran deal was $400,000 and things broke down with Tunisia because Tunisia was more in the range of $1 million. And so,
whereas now Iran might be suing Canada Soccer, if you believe what's coming out from the Iranian press, for $10 million.
Exactly. So if that decision was taken, Tunisia over Iran because of $600,000, that one, I think, should be clarified. Two, if that was the decision, there should be it should be known why that $600,000 extra wasn't spent, when yes, Tunisia would theoretically draw less tickets sold.
I would think considerably less.
But however, they would seemingly be a far better opponent for John Herdman and his players to play a fellow North African side to prepare for Morocco. So that's where I think that's the kind of issue, if it's true, that I think people can have with the CSA and how they're run. Now, another part of that equation or that questioning is, what was the Iran route taken because it costs us money and they make more only, or was it literally, hey, at this moment we can't afford to pay an extra $600,000 to a team that is likely not to draw, not to sell out BC Place, might get half of BC Place full or the lower bowl or whatever. So that's the issue for me. The Iran game being canceled, I think, like I said earlier, in the end, although I don't disagree with anything you guys said in terms of some of these other other things, and the team doesn't necessarily represent the military who committed this heinous act or whatever. I don't disagree with those things. However, I think probably in this case, I think I don't begrudge them canceling it. And correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things we heard was that the players weren't going to play in that game. And originally I heard that it was because it was Iran. It had nothing to do with these, the contract issues.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's come out since, that they weren't keen to play the game.
Well, yeah, and it came out pretty close. I heard it like the day of or the day after or whatever, right?
Oh, I heard it quite late in the day then.
No, I heard it pretty close to the announcement. But I wonder if that sentiment was not so much related to the Iran issues, but more so to the state of the contract negotiations. Like the players likely at that point already were talking about, hey, we're not going to play, because that was the friendly is the game they cannot. The friendly was the game they could strike for. They can't strike for Thursday's game.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing. Because folk were like, oh, are they going to play on Thursday? Yeah, they have to, because it's a CONCACAF official tournament. FIFA would get involved. It would have long consequences that could affect the 2026 World Cup if they didn't play a game like that.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest, they're not the only team that didn't turn up to play a game in the past week, because Scotland didn't turn up for their game against Ukraine either.
I thought you were going to talk about Jamaica.
Off my own accord?
Yeah. Didn't they have issues this week too?
I don't know, actually. I've missed that.
Oh, I thought they did.
Well, they did play because Javane Brown got an assist, I believe. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So, it was always going to be tough to get an opponent in this window because of all the other action that was going on around the world, and they were going to have to pay money. And Iran, if they could get them cheap, and they were going to sell all those tickets, they were going to make a fair profit from this game. And in the end, it got cancelled. They bowed down to the pressure. There were rumours going around that the visas hadn't even been issued to the Iranian players at that point as well. So, again, there's so much hearsay. We just don't have the transparency. But according to Canada Soccer, it's all been dealt with, and we've discussed that and we've moved on. Well, we haven't. And they need to start answering some of these questions. So the search to find a replacement was on. I was surprised that they found one, to be honest, Steve, at such short notice. And then when it was announced that it was Panama, it was pretty underwhelming, really, because it's like you've just played them twice, and it's another CONCACAF team. They're not exactly going to draw, and I was like, meh, I'm glad I'm not able to go to the game now.
Yeah, essentially, I think that even gave more fuel to the Canadian soccer players or something like that they didn't want to, that this game wasn't important at that point, maybe, and it maybe even put them more in that position. For me, yeah, it was very underwhelming, the replacement. But when you're looking at a replacement that short notice, you're not expecting. Like I actually thought it might be even a lesser team that they would have played, maybe like a Caribbean team or something like that they would have had to bring in. So
I could say it's
like a Bermuda.
If the Whitecaps hadn't been playing the game on the Saturday, they would have probably sorted out a game against the Whitecaps or something. Yeah,
or they could have brought two teams like Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, there was that that concept of playing a CPL All-Star team.
Yeah.
Like that was legit.
I thought it was just like a fan-driven thing.
No, there was some conversations. There were some people trying to make it happen.
That would have been fun. Yeah. I think that would have been more entertaining for me than seeing Panama. Like you've just seen them play, and I mean, it was going to be a game that was going to be used for a little bit of experimentation, trying some stuff out, having a look at some players. So that's gone out the window now. Now, the first murmurs of discontent came on Friday. I was obviously sick, so I wasn't able to get to any of the training anyway, but on Friday, training was meant to have taken place at 2:15 up at UBC. Media went up there. Then they were told, it's going to be 4:15. So they're all hanging around at the training centre. And then at 4:30, someone starts to take all the equipment in. Yeah. And the media's like, what's going on? And then it's like, it's been cancelled. Now, immediately, I thought, there's probably been a COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
That's just what you think about these days. But then on the Saturday, it came out that no, the players had refused to train. And then they refused to train again on the Saturday. And then going into Sunday, it was all will they play, won't they play? I've got to say, Sunday morning, with all that going on, I thought, there's no way they're not going to play. I mean, did either of you genuinely think, yeah, that game's not going to go ahead?
I wasn't sure, honestly. I thought maybe it might, maybe it won't. I did, it's hard to tell. And this is the thing, and I know I'm going to jump a little bit ahead to the letter. The thing is they're talking about they're learning recently, that they're, of all the details and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that told me, how did this get so, accelerated so quickly? I think somebody said March or something.
But they said they've been trying to talk to the bigwigs from March, but then
but see, that's March.
A vacation.
That's only 3 months.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. When it's that short time frame, I can't believe that they canceled a game based on that. That's my biggest thing. The 3 months. It's only been 3 months since you have been trying to talk to them. you understand that this is a federation that people take years to get things done. Like it's amazing how slow this is. Like a bureaucracy. There's like red tape everywhere. Just trying to squeeze through it.
I think they should have started the talks way before March. That's one of the issues as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a short period to suddenly, as you say, it's escalated hell of a quick.
Like if I'm like my expectation would have been that if they learned this in March, they should, and maybe this is because they don't have good representation. I don't know, but they should have been not like brought to this point where a game was canceled until next year. That's essentially like it should have taken a year for them to cancel.
Yeah, but this is all around the World Cup money though, so it has to get accelerated.
I know, I totally understand that, but the like you don't like something comes up and then 3 months later it gets canceled. I'm totally like that. That's shocking to me. Now the big difference, and I know there was talk about a women's game. I think it was in Ottawa that might have been canceled, but that was a totally different thing. That wasn't about money. That was about like getting some stuff in the investigation getting going, right? So that's a totally different thing. So that I don't like put those two in the same boat here. But for me, that's my biggest thing. 3 months is all it took for you to get from a point where you learned about something to getting a game canceled.
Well, a couple of things about that, Steve. I've heard some former players talk about how it's crazy for former Canadian men's national teams players talk about how it's crazy that none of like this wasn't sorted out before they started qualifying, because they said kind of in the past all the bonuses and all what you would get was all sorted out like before they would start qualifying. So it's crazy that wasn't known or talked about. The other thing, Steve, and this is total speculation, but it seems in the realm of possibility, or seems like it's not a huge leap, right? You qualify in March and supposedly negotiations start around that time or whatever. But then what happens, Steve? All the players go back to their clubs, and you're Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich with several friends who are going to the World Cup. You're Jonathan David.
Yeah.
You're at all these big clubs around the world. You're in Turkey, whatever. You start talking to your teammates about, hey, what is it? What does qualifying for the World Cup mean for you in your country?
Yeah.
And you hear about everything that it means for your European or South American teammates, and you're like, wait, what? We're not getting that. And so I think again, this is just guesstimating or whatever, but it's hard to believe that didn't play a factor in kind of escalating this, or at least elevating the desires or the demands or the expectations of the players, right? Because which to me is also crazy, because if you're Alphonso Davies and you're talking to your several teammates who play, for example, the German national team, you cannot then go to the CSA, which is is a developed nation, but in footballing sense is a developing nation, and say, I expect to get what Germany is offering their players.
Totally. Yeah,
that sounds crazy. But that's how I think it got to this.
Yeah, I think I agree. I was going to bring that point up. It's apples and oranges when you compare a Turkey or a France, because even like a Turkey, because the Turkey, they might not be like a developed nation like you said, like Canada is, but they're soccer fanatics. It's their number one sport, probably. I'm assuming, and so there's a lot of money invested in there. Exactly. So for me, like if that's the case, that even puts more of a black eye on the players that they tried to compare Canada, which is basically almost like a toddler in the soccer world, and comparing it to the bigger nations out there who are full-fledged, professional players.
Well, you also hit the nail on the head, Steve, when you said about the representation, because it's like, who has been representing these players? Because obviously there isn't a players' union, and there needs to be one, and I think this might now be something that tips more of the players into pushing for that. But who's been doing the negotiating for them? Because it's come out today, we're recording this Wednesday night, so it's come out today that the players have said they're going to have legal representation now.
Yeah.
So who was doing the negotiations on behalf of the players?
And I don't want to. Well, I kind of do want to make light of it, because it was funny to me when I saw the letter posted. It just looked like a Word document, basically. There was no letterhead, nothing
I
like
have
that.
It up here just now, and
and it was very plain. They didn't even change the font. It looked like, so it was like, I was like, boy, this is really ordinary, like a release or whatever.
But Michael, Michael, you asked about, did you think, on Saturday or whatever was the game in jeopardy? I didn't, even though I also got a message from someone who is friends with a player on the team saying, hey, the team has canceled their appearance at the Whitecaps game on Saturday.
Yeah, you told me that.
Because they're unhappy about the World Cups, the World Cup, splitting of the World Cup pot. And so they're protesting by not coming to the Whitecaps game the way they were scheduled to. But even at that point, I turned up. Yeah, even that to me didn't mean. I
would have bought all of that. I would have been fine with them canceling training, not coming to the Whitecaps, making a message about that.
Not but speaking to media, not doing promotional things, all that stuff. Yeah,
but show up to the game. Like even what was it? What country was it? El Salvador? And I know it's World Cup qualifying, so it's much different than a friendly. But they were close to not playing, and they probably have bigger issues than what Canada is going through.
That is the thing,
but they decided to play because it was for the nation.
Yeah, I'm not meaning this in any disrespectful way at all, but over the years, when you've heard about these issues, it's been countries in Central America, Latin America, in Africa, and sometimes in South America, where the federations are very open to question as to exactly how they're run. When it happens to something like Canada, it is a bit more shocking in some regards as well.
And I'm not gonna. And again, I don't want to be disrespectful to the players, but I've said this before that players, for the most part, are not very bright. Because it's not their
only
fault.
Learning about stuff from 2018 when it's been everywhere,
and it's not their fault because they've been in a soccer. Their life is soccer, so they don't. They're obviously very few of them went to college. So they've been basically, and most likely even high school stuff. They, if they were smart, they got through it. If they weren't that bright, they probably just got like barely through it. But their main focus has been soccer all their life. So they haven't, and that's where I'm talking about the representation. Like, who was the one that led the charge in this? Because it wasn't, what they did was not a good, promising thing. Because it's damaged their reputation, but more importantly, it's damaged the reputation of soccer. And the fact that, and I understand that you have to put Dear Canada, but it sounded like when you put Dear Canada, it sounded like it's like a Dear John letter. Like you're breaking up with your fans, basically.
It was.
So even that wasn't very good. Yeah.
It was a very long, rambling letter at times. I know this is kind of coming across that we're really ragging on the players here.
And that's
interesting because I didn't know where this chat was going to go with us.
And that's why at the beginning I wanted to mention that I don't trust the Canada Soccer. Like for the most part, I don't trust that organization, and they've been for a long time just been reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. It seems like. So for that, but saying that it's just that I don't disagree with what the players are saying, but it's the way they did it is my issue with them.
I mean, I should probably say I back the players in this. I don't back how they went about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm backing the players for their cause. Because in their letter, I'm not going to read it all because it's a very long letter, but a couple of bits that stand out. So that they're asking about where is the progression of Canadian soccer and where is the money. So at least they didn't lead with where is the money, because I think a lot of folks thinking, just greedy soccer players wanting all this extra money. Then they go on to talk about the Canadian soccer business deal that was signed in 2018, and we'll come to that in a sec to end this part. And then they say, we want to work together with the organisation, but the relationship has been strained for years. And like, we've all spoken to former players, and Zach, you mentioned that earlier in the show, it has been something that's been needed to a while. I loved the line, though, that said, due to executives delaying the process and taking vacations. Now, we don't know who took those vacations. Side note, Nick Bontis's tan looked very nice, I thought, in the press conference. But
again, like, Nick Bontis, like, he's not paid for this, right? Like, this is...
So people keep telling me.
Yeah. Like...
Just as well, because I'd like to see his sort of performance review.
Yeah,
like for the most part, I think all these people, while they're not getting paid for it, they get a lot of like freebies They get a lot of things paid for them, or to go places and stuff like that. And
I did read someone saying if you look at some of the minutes, or you can go back and look at the minutes and the budgets and the expenditure list, and someone who was very pro player was expressing concern if you go back in previous years and see how much is spent on bringing the board together to meet. But again, part of that, I don't know if maybe they're staying at the most expensive hotels or something, but I guess part of it is when you're bringing people from, Brittany's from out here, obviously, and most of them are from Ontario, or some of them are from Ontario. So you got to get together to meet. So there are going to be costs, but is that, how big of a perk is that, right? If you're, are they all flying like super, first class and like staying in the most expensive hotels? Yeah, maybe that needs to change, but I don't think any of them. I don't know how any of them would be getting rich off, what they're doing.
I don't think they are. So the players' letter, it highlighted 5 things that going forward that they felt they needed. Just want to touch on one to end this part, which was the very first point that they raised, which was transparency and a review of the Canadian Soccer Business Agreement. So we'll try and keep this bit a little bit brief. So Canada Soccer signed a deal in 2018 with Canada Soccer Business. Canada Soccer Business, to my understanding, is owned and run by the owners of the CPL teams. And under that agreement, Canada Soccer Business are the ones that negotiate the media deals and everything that goes with that. And the media deal was with Media Pro, which was a 10-year deal, which includes the Canadian Premier League, and it includes all the international games that the Canadian men and women's team play. It's then up to Media Pro if they want to sublet those deals, so to speak. And basically, if TSN said, we want to show that game, they have to pay Media Pro. So Canada Soccer don't see any of that money. But in return, Canada Soccer have received a lump sum payment, or maybe not a lump sum payment, but they've got a guaranteed payment for 10 years. At the end of that 10 years, my understanding is Canada Soccer Business also have a 10-year option to extend the deal. Now, I see pros and cons of that deal. And there was a lot of things that Gareth Wheeler said on Sunday on One Soccer that were very infuriating. And I thought I'd accidentally tuned into North Korea soccer when I had tuned into the messages that were coming out of it at one point. But he was right in saying, back in 2018, nobody wanted to show these Canadian games on the telly. Canada Soccer had to pay for the games to get on TV. Just like the Whitecaps had to pay to get broadcasting in the past on the radio and various deals. The demand for soccer was not massive. We're all soccer fans. We love it. We want to watch it. But it's not a money maker for the big TV stations. Let's be brutally honest here. So a company came in, and fair play to Media Pro for doing that, investing in Canada Soccer. But it was a short-sighted move in many ways by the CSA to sign a deal for so long when you know that in that period the World Cup is going to be in North America, where the interest in the game, even if we hadn't qualified for this World Cup, over the next 4 years, the excitement and the interest in football in this country was just going to get blown out of the water as we approach World Cup 2026.
But that's the whole part of the deal, though, Michael. You had people paying for something that previously you couldn't give away. In fact, you had to pay for other people to do it. So what CSB was doing was, or what the Canadian Soccer Association did was, they mortgaged the present for a brighter future.
Yes.
Right. And so I don't, again, at this moment, not knowing any of the more concrete elements of the agreement, I don't fault them for that. They took something that was a net negative for them and turned it into revenue. Like it seems
Canadian Soccer Business issued their own statement, and they've said that they've already invested tens of millions of dollars into Canadian soccer, and they're going to continue to invest millions more. But they said that they are also wanting transparency as well, because the question, like, I'm not faulting Canada Soccer in the most part for signing that deal. 10 years, with hindsight, does seem a long time, but I do get that is why the deal was done, because what is in it for Media Pro otherwise? But the big question is, where has all this money gone that they've been investing?
No, but okay, so that's the other part. And I can't give you a reference for the article, but when the deal was signed, $200 million over 10 years, essentially $20 million a year for 10 years, it was said that wasn't all cash, that included like Media Pro's cost of like setting everything up, of their, getting their infrastructure and, their trucks and their equipment and all that kind of stuff. So it was never, my understanding was, it was never like, hey, they're getting $20 million in cash every year. It was opaque.
Well, yeah, because I mean, obviously Kurt Larson doesn't come cheap.
Oh, come on. Let's please. We're talking about Wheeler and that guy on the show. Come on. No. So it would be nice to have transparency around that. Yeah. And I think maybe we will get that in the days ahead. But also the other thing about this being not, in my opinion, not a bad business decision at the time by the Canadian Soccer Association. This is 2018, man. Mm-hmm. Alphonso Davies was not a star at Bayern Munich. Very few people knew who Jonathan David was. Eustachio, I think, was just getting involved with the Canadian team. No one other than maybe Herdman or Voyageurs thought that there's any chance Canada's going to be in the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas Cavallini was just an armored vehicle. He wasn't even a tank by that point.
Oh my goodness.
I would agree with that too. I would even say that, you say 2018. I would say up to maybe, what was it? When did qualification start last year? September. None of us thought that they were going to be in the World Cup at that point. They thought, maybe they get to the fourth spot and then they might get a
playoff game.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would even put it up to there that we didn't. This has been the rise of the men's Canadian soccer team. Other than their escalating from March to now to cancel the game, that's been the biggest rise in anything in Canadian soccer.
One of the only valid critiques I see at this time of the deal between the CSA and CSB is that I think the CSA is doing this for the betterment of the game as a whole in the country. They were doing it to secure some revenues, removing some of these expenditures that they had to getting paid for games on TV. But ultimately, I think it's a fair question to say, how does a not-for-profit organization that is only about the betterment of the game make a deal with a company that is for profit and long-term is about making money for themselves? Mm-hmm. I see a fair critique there, but I still think from a business sense, it was a good deal for them. And I think the other thing is I think it really sustained them, or at least help sustain them during the pandemic. Again, without knowing CPL. How they get all their other money.
They've got that money in.
Yeah, and I think it was made essentially as a backup in case the CPL did not jump, start the way they wanted to. As well.
CSB, for the owners, yes. CSB, if we've said this before, is the equivalent of some. CSB is to the CPL as some is to MLS.
I was explaining to that. I was on Jackson Phelps's radio show down in Seattle, and then off air we were just chatting about everything, and I was explaining to him that the CSB is basically our sum. Yeah, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Because to a lot of Americans, they're just seeing this for the first time, and they're like, what's all this?
Yeah, and so again, as we've talked about many times when we talk about the Canadian Premier League, they are trying to look at what the Americans, the USSF, MLS, what they did, look at what they did and take the best parts of that and replicate it and or do it better. And so some, as we've talked about many times, if you're an MLS owner, some is the reason why you're in the game, right? If you're an investor, if you don't care about football, it's because you can write off the operational costs if you're losing money on the football side, and while making, millions or tens of millions from some.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at that time, it was a good deal, and it got the CPL started. For any criticisms that you can give to One Soccer, they've invested heavily in the Canadian game. They've given an outlet for all these teams and players to be seen, and they've got to be commended for that. But it does leave you wondering, just where has that money gone? So we've got CSA, we've got CSB. A lot of folk will say that this whole weekend there's been a lot of CSCs probably as well. But we'll talk a little bit more about Canada's soccer. Where does this leave everything? The perception of it, and what might need to change in the infrastructure and the leadership of this game. We'll be back with all of that after this.
This is Atiba Hutchinson, and you're listening to the AFTN Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's our new Artist of the Month here at AFTN for the month of June from Brooklyn, USA. Three-piece band called Thick. That is a song taken from their debut album, 2020's 5 Years Behind. That was Sleeping Through the Weekend, which is, of course, what I did for most of the weekend with all my COVID symptoms, which might have been actually got by going to see the band Thick as they played at the Hollywood Theatre in Vancouver just about 2 weeks ago now.
When did that band form?
The first single came out in 2016.
Oh, okay. I was wondering because I saw that the way you spell it, I thought it might be spelled differently. Like the cool way to do it. THICC or something like that.
Yeah, no, 2016, I believe. So, very good band. There was three bands on the bill. It was headlined by The Chats, our former Artist of the Month here at AFTN. Really looking forward to seeing them. But for me, Thick were the best band on it. They blew me away. When I'd seen that they were the support, I'd started to listen to a lot of their stuff, and I thought, I really like this band. Got their CD at the show. We're going to have another song from them later on. If you want to check it out, you can check out their official website on thick.band. And yeah, we'll be playing their debut single from 2016 to kick off the new part. So hope you enjoy them. We've got some good songs to come from them this month. So that was Sleeping Through the Weekend. And you could have slept through the weekend and not had to worry about missing a Canada soccer game, because obviously that did not take place on Sunday here in Vancouver. What did take place though at BC Place was what came across as a rather unhinged press conference from CSA President Nick Bontis. I genuinely came away from watching that thinking, if he speaks to the players the way that he spoke in that press conference, they've every right to walk out. And if Daniel Henry wanted to give her a little punch along the way, I wouldn't put anything past him, really. What did you think when you saw that, first of all, Steve? I could not believe what a car crash that was.
Yeah, his bedside manner wasn't that great. Being
No,
I
wouldn't want him to be my doctor.
Yeah, I think he's just obviously clearly not the skills he has definitely don't come to like answering questions.
No, he was rattled. He was very frazzled in that.
So that's where sometimes you want to have somebody in that position that can actually. I think we've had a couple of guys before that have been better. I think Montagliani obviously was better at taking questions when he did take questions. And who's it? Metropolis?
Peter Montopoli, and then there was Steve, somebody.
Yeah, so Nick, Dr. Bontis.
Dr. Nick.
Dr. Nick. Oh, Nick.
Stephen Reed is the other guy.
He should have came into the press conference like that, the way Dr. Nick.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nick.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Dr. Nick.
I would say that he definitely. I think they should bring somebody in, not as a new president, but like somebody that can handle the media a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't think they should be putting him in front of the cameras anytime soon. But I mean, Zach, his tone from start to finish was not great. Do you disagree? Did you like it?
I didn't like it, and I don't want to sound like a CSA apologist by any stretch.
You are so far.
But no, like I mean, I stand by the fact that I think that the deal they made with CB was good. I read comments before I saw it, like I wasn't watching live. I
didn't see it till I got back from my commentating. It was the first thing I watched when I got home.
I read some comments on Twitter and I thought, oh, this is horrendous. And then I watched it and I was like, there's things that weren't good for sure. I think that he went into it emotionally, which was probably not the best approach. I wasn't that put off by the way he talked. I don't know.
I think it was because you were set up by Twitter that it was so bad that you went.
Yeah, maybe I had this over expectation. And I was like, oh, that wasn't that.
I just didn't like his tone throughout. Like from the very first thing where he was, it was like one of those when businesses go up when there's been a bad incident or there's been a racist incident and they're like, we are truly sorry and you do not deserve this. But then it just felt like he was ranting and he'd lost control.
Because I think the whole thing is he made sure that the beginning was apologetic because he knew that was probably the parts that are going to be clipped by the media, the mainstream media.
Yeah, because folk do have very short term.
Yeah, and so he probably knows that not very many people are gonna watch the whole thing through.
Well, it's like when we clip stuff for the show, we often, like from Whitecaps press conferences, just take the first little bits.
Or the ones we ask questions of.
Oh yeah.
The one thing is he did make me feel like I could maybe one day work for the CSA because apparently as long as you're passionate about the game. Like I was surprised that he kept on repeating that how passionate him and Earl are about the game. I have to admit, Earl, I have like negative like PTSD of Earl just because he was involved with TFC and like the beginning of their MLS incarnation or they're starting
they've
in MLS
just done
or whatever,
a worldwide search and they settled on Earl. Yeah,
that reminds me of another organization that used to do that kind of stuff. I don't know. I obviously, it wasn't great. It wasn't good, but I mean, the things that actually bothered me more were things like, hey, we're here, we have our phones, we want to meet face to face, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. When it's like, if you really want to meet, you go meet. Like, why are you sitting waiting for them to call? Like, you want to get something done. I don't know. I heard crazy, unsubstantiated crazy things about some of their brief negotiations leading up to the game and it not happening and stuff. But yeah, the whole we want to meet face to face and we're in our hotel room waiting for them to call. And it's like, dude, you're in the same hotel. Just go talk. If you really want to get something done, just go and get it done. I don't know.
And we live in a world where you can do negotiations via Zoom. now, face to face, like there or teams or whatever you want to call it. They could have even started talking on Friday. They don't have to. You don't have to be in the same city to talk about what's going on. So that's what was.
But I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that, Steve, when he said, you don't always get tone, or you don't always get.
Listen,
it's not quite the same.
If it's about the game getting canceled, you don't worry about tone, and you get on the phone or face to face on Zoom or whatever.
But I think he was also trying to sympathize with the players who said, we haven't been able to have face to face discussions because people haven't been around or whatever. But
yeah, also it should be pointed out, Bontis has spoken before anti-union.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Closed door conferences and stuff. So that doesn't align him for a player thinking, I'm going to get a fair shake of the stick here.
So apparently they met on Sunday, but then you heard he left on Monday morning, right?
He left on Monday morning.
Did you hear why?
One of the reports that came out from Gareth Wheeler was that his family and his house had been kind of under attack after stuff, which
that's awful.
Cross a line and is terrible. And is that for all you think, well, for all I think that I thought he did a terrible job in that press conference, you don't do something like that. That is just taking it to a whole different level.
Because I heard the news separate times, so I was like, how can he say he wants to meet face to face, have one meeting, and then leave? And then later I heard the report that.
I mean, that is shocking if that was the case. But he did say some things in it, which again, this is where it all comes down to transparency, because nobody actually knows what the players' demands are. Gareth Wheeler put out his thoughts on that One Soccer thing that he was doing, but the players have never confirmed what their demands are. But Bontis said, holding up a very battered piece of paper during the press conference, it looked like something had been spilt on it. It wasn't in very good condition. That if they had only the men's team and only the women's team and no beach soccer, which was maybe not a good example to try and give, because folk would be like, yeah, I'm fine with that. No futsal, no para stuff, and no training for referees, which surprised me. I didn't know they got trained. And all that other kind of development that they do, they still could not afford what the players were looking for. And then someone pointed out, but if you hadn't qualified for the World Cup, you'd still have to pay for all those programs anyway.
Yeah.
So they're talking about the World Cup money, the extra money, not the money that's already in your budget.
Exactly. That's where it came up odd. Concerning that piece of paper, it kind of looked very similar to the stuff that MLS makes the rules on. I found that funny.
I thought I saw a new allocated money somewhere written on there.
Yeah, I for me, it was just like, again, obviously, clearly it was a rushed, even though they had lots of time to prepare, I thought, but it seemed like a rushed press conference. And he wasn't prepared for it, essentially. He was prepared for the beginning, but then once the questions came flying in, that's when he probably got flustered.
Yeah. And again, it was limited questions, and there was people on the Zoom call, including Westhead from...
Westhead.
From TSN.
He's the one that broke the news.
He broke it, had his hand up to ask a question, and then just did not go to him. But having taken part in a number of CSA Zoom calls, I stand there with my hand up constantly from the start as well and never get picked. So I felt the affinity there with him.
You should probably send an email to them.
Yeah. But then you just get an email back telling you to call. That's part of the issue as well. To cut ahead... The game against Curacao is going on. Yeah. Errol Cochrane seems to feel that negotiations with the players had gone very well over the last couple of days. Timo Hutchison didn't give that same glowing impression when he spoke to media. He was the only player to have spoken to the media since all this started on Friday, and it was an emotional time, and it is tough to go up. And John Herdman spoke today and was quite emotional about it all. Mm-hmm. But the fallout from it is the Curacao game is going ahead, and it had to, because then FIFA would have got involved if it didn't. But what does this do to the perception of the team and to the perception of Canada soccer to the general Canadian public, would you say?
Oh, it's not good. I don't know about you guys, but many people have, first thing they said to me when they've seen me is like, hey, what's going on? Well, and these are people who are like ice hockey people or whatever, not sports people. They know that there's a problem. I saw my father-in-law, that day or whatever. He's like, "What's the deal? Like, what do we not know?" And people texting and messaging and like being like, "What is happening here? Why is this such a fiasco?"
I only know football people, so I've not
Yeah.
had.
No, so but yeah, and even football people have been messaging me, like supporter people have been like, "Yeah, what's?" Yeah, so the perception is awful. It is, if they were on cloud 9, on March 27th, like they've fallen pretty far since then.
Yeah. For me, like this is definitely probably knocked out a few people that were maybe on the fringe. I know the people that are, long term, or the people that have supported during this period probably will not be affected. They'll still, come to games or something like that. But the fringe people are definitely on the fence at this point. I was watching like a sports show on TV that comes on TV. And they rarely lead with soccer, but they led with soccer in this case. And they even read some people's comments. And for the most part, people were like, I'm not a soccer fan, and I was planning on maybe going to the game. And after this, I'll probably never go again. I'm not even going to attempt it. That could be the case that it's a legitimate thing, because sometimes these people just write these letters into the thing just to make sure to be as vicious as possible so they can get read on the air. So yeah, for me, definitely you can tell at that point once you get, and this all comes to being if it's a local sports team, like a city team, your city team, the Whitecaps, Toronto, if that gets canceled, people will muddle around or whatever with that. They'll blame somebody and they'll end up going to. When it's a national team, people are a little bit different. Like this is a city, and I know it's a long time ago. You guys might not know this, but in '72, playing the Russians and not playing a very well game, they were booed off the ice, and during the '72 series, and that was the fourth game, the last game in Canada before they moved to Russia for the second set of 4 games. And so they were booed off the ice, and a player actually like on the air told them told the fans off basically about what or to this extent. So yeah, like Vancouver fans are very over the years have been very like when something doesn't go right, they will usually stop their support.
I mean,
on the upside, at least maybe Max Crepeau won't be starting, and he won't get booed by it.
Yeah, that's true. That was one of the other things we talked about on our non-existent extra show. I mean, it made CTV News. Vancouver was one of the lead stories on that. I watched that night, and it was kind of heartbreaking because they spoke to a guy that travelled all the way from PEI, and he'd wanted to watch the Canadian national team, and he'd come to do this trip, and I so felt for him. And then there was a family that had driven from the Okanagan, and it was a husband, wife, and 2 kids. And how do you explain to the kids exactly why you're now not seeing your favourite stars? It's a tough sell, and for the Vancouver market, if we want to use business terms, I know Zach hates me when I talk about markets, but you've now had 2 cancelled games. So you've got folks sitting waiting for refunds for 2 cancelled games. And then they tried to make it up to people by offering people that had a ticket for Sunday the chance to get 75% off the game on Thursday, which wouldn't have helped a lot of people that already had a ticket for Thursday's game, for one thing. And I would think a lot of the diehards are going to have tickets for both games. So that didn't help them. Then I tweeted about that, and so many people were replying going, the code doesn't even work to get the 75% off, for one thing. And then there was a buy one, get one ticket offer that was going around as well. Yeah. So it's like, what is the incentive then to buy your tickets early? I know for the Voyager section, they're special tickets, it's limited tickets, etc. But there's not exactly an incentive now for people to rush and get these games to sell out. And as Steve said, folk in this market now they'll be wary of buying tickets.
But they just won't. They just won't
they'll just have to say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
There is something aside from this stuff. There is something weird going on where, in the supporter community across, maybe not holistically, but in more than one place in the country, where it actually the qualifying feels like it's I one long-time supporter I messaged like, hey, are you going to any of these games? And they're like, no, ever since we've qualified, I have this like strange desire just not to go to the games anymore. It's like we accomplished something that I never thought we would, and I don't. Wow. It's really weird. And then I talked to other people who are connected across the country, and there is something I think weird happening where there's now that this has happened or whatever now that this has been achieved, the engagement isn't quite where it has been. Now that is not the same in like CPL communities, but definitely in the large 3 MLS communities for sure. If you had asked the Voyageurs about ticket sales for not just these games, but even I know the game in Toronto for the women's team is not what they would have thought it would have been. And there are factors like cost and like, here now, it's just starting, but there's the whole thing we talked about a while ago, Michael, with this year starting, the super saturation of League One and MLS and CPL on the island and all that kind of stuff. I think
there's a lot of football on, and I mean, just this past weekend there was League One BC games on Friday. On Sunday you had Whitecaps 2 on Sunday. You had meant to be the Canada game on Sunday. You had the Whitecaps MLS on the Saturday.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money for people to shell out. Going back to the players' letter, there was the 5 things that they were looking for to go forward: transparency and a review of the Canadian Soccer Business Agreement. So we've touched on that, and there does need to be transparency, and everyone wants to know what's paid, where's the money going, what's it being used for, everything like that. They want a leadership team that can optimise this moment and generate revenue from corporate sponsorship that should be used to drive the game forward at all levels for years to come: grassroots, youth, para and senior programmes. Now, again, though, Canada Soccer Business...
They didn't mention the beach football.
No, I don't think anyone really cares about beach football.
Well, this is the problem, though, Michael, is part of the reason why you do a deal with a CSB is because I think they handle a bunch of that, getting the sponsors and stuff.
They do.
Yeah.
So it when I've heard other people talking about it, it's very, very much reminded me of the situation with the Whitecaps and player acquisition, where you can create your own in-house scouting and player recruitment department, including analytics and whatever else you want, or you can work with an agency that you trust. And in one sense, it feels a little bit, and not on the shady side that some people might think of, but I think this feels a little bit like that, right? The CSA went with an easier option that will cost them less money and guaranteed them some money now, or a guaranteed amount of money or whatever over a period of time, as opposed to developing their own department that would work at bringing in big sponsorship dollars from X, Y, or Z. I've also heard
this is a time when all these businesses want to be involved with the national
or they
team.
Should be, yeah. I've also heard concerns over, again, without maybe these are unsubstantiated concerns, but from people closer to things than maybe we are, that there's great concern over like what the deal with Nike is for the national team, and how is it actually creating revenue, or is it just
people haven't been able to get the jerseys? Well, I know at least 5 people that's had their orders for jerseys cancelled.
Yeah, but that's I think partly due to the pandemic and whatever.
Yeah, but also we apparently are one of the countries that's not bringing out a World Cup jersey.
Oh, right. I think you told me that.
What I've heard as well, which seems a big lost revenue opportunity.
Yeah, it seems very
surely we'd all want one, and it's.
But again, what is in that deal? I mean, you're talking about transparency. What is in that deal with Nike? Does it actually generate any or much money, or is it more just they give us all our supplies and
But I wonder how much of this will be. It's like, it's non-disclosure. We can't give this out, so we can't have that transparency.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, another thing is they want an equitable structure with our women's national team that shares the same player match fees, percentage of prize money earned at our respective World Cups, and the development of a women's domestic league. And I think the players on the men's side thought that was a good thing that they were saying until the women came out and issued a statement. Sunday was statement day, saying, I don't think that equitable structure is quite what the men are thinking it is.
Yeah.
So obviously the prize money at the men's World Cup, stratospheric compared to the prize money at the women's World Cup.
It is.
Yeah, and so the women don't want the same percentage. They basically, the women, it's interesting because it was almost like the men tried to, on the surface, do what the men and the women in the States did, where the women then came back and said, no, we want in actuality what they're doing in the States, where it's one pool, women's World Cup money goes in with men's World Cup money, and then it's divided, and it's not equal percentages, it's equals dollars.
Yeah. World Cup compensation, which is primarily, I think, where a lot of this is going around. So they want 40% of prize money and a comprehensive friends and family package for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Because one of the things that was mentioned was they were only able to bring 2 players with them, or 2 members.
Not bring. They were going to be given 2 tickets for family.
That was it.
Yeah.
But then Nick Bontis has said that wasn't even part of the discussions before. So I don't know, did they just sneak that in? But 40% of the prize money is basically what the CSA are saying that they can't afford. But this is extra money. And there's been figures getting put out there today that every country that's going to be at the World Cup, it's going to be like $10 million, Steve, that they get as a prize pot. And the players want 40% of that. But Manuel Veth came out tonight and said that just is scratching the tip of the iceberg. It could
that seems low to me.
Yeah, it could be up to 25
that
million.
Always, when I heard that number, that's all they're getting, 10 million. That seems so low, like each country. So that didn't seem
15
right.
15 to 25 million is what you're talking about.
I would say that what Manuel put out there, I would say the higher number is probably more likely.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, actually, it's the same number of countries from the last. Like next World Cup, the 2026 one might be a little bit less because there's more teams in it, so it obviously gets divided.
And by 2030, it's like if you're not qualified for the World Cup, you'll be one of the probably minimum countries in the world because it'll be like 128 team World Cup or something by that point.
For me, the number, the 10 million seemed low. So maybe that's another thing the CSA is trying to hide from the players or something like that.
So they want 40%. CSA seems to be 30%.
Yeah, but here's the thing. My understanding is that part of the problem with this is that I think it's the CSA is 30% to the men, 30% to the women, 40% to the association, whereas the men are saying 40% for us, which then means 40% for the women, which then means 20% for the association. And on top of that, my understanding is there is a desire from the players for what they get to be the CSA either to pay the tax,
I was going to say
or
tax-free,
or to make sure that they don't have to pay tax on it. Which that's maybe another conversation. But the what was the other element to this? The tax-free 40-40-20. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to say. I think, and again, one of the things that Bontis and Cochran didn't do well necessarily, because maybe it's not the time or whatever, but, in the name of transparency, they were talking about all these other things, but I think, excuse me, what the CSA is doing with the money that they get from this, that they want to keep for the organization, is reinvest into those programs, but also supposedly to reinvest in things like this new national training center in Vaughan, Ontario, right? So I think it's when people are like, oh, what do they need that money for? I think it's them saying, we are going to use this to continue to further develop the game, to grow the next generation of players. And one of those things is this national player center or development center in Vaughan.
Yeah, we won't talk too much more about this because there's a lot more that we could say, but we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit now. it's maybe going to be hard to keep this last little bit short, because it's like, what needs to change in Canada soccer? So the final thing that the players were looking for were more former players involved. And I feel you have to have that. It's got to be more ex-players involved. There needs to be more transparency. But they've also got to be easier to deal with. Now, I can only come from this from a media side. The media hate dealing with the CSA, and they have for years. And they're not easy to deal with. You send emails and you get an email back saying, "Oh, call me." And then you call and they haven't even read the email that you've sent to begin with, and you've got to just go through everything again. Now, that's just a very small thing that to most folks going to be like, so how does that affect us? But that's just kind of like the dysfunction and the way that they run.
Example. It's an example of the, and it's been like this for like arranging interviews and stuff in the past too. Oh yeah, well.
Because years ago you could get one-on-ones no problem, but now that both teams are very successful, there's no one-on-ones, and on the press conferences it's like a running joke. We know who's going to get picked and in what order to ask the questions.
Exactly.
It's the same people, it's the same message that's getting over, and then
they'll cut off the questions.
Yeah, they'll cut off the questions. Or the CSA representative will ask a bunch of questions himself because it's a message that they want to get over.
Yeah.
Training's a pain in the ass to try and go and see, and you're kept outside and you're kept hanging about. So there's that side of it. So because of that, the media's never really been on CSA's side for years. And I think that's led to a lot of the bad press that they've got in the last couple of days as well.
No, I want to go over the one part that they said the more ex-players being involved. The thing is, I can't speak to the other parts of the world. But I'm talking about like North American sports. When ex-players get involved on the management side or the ownership side or I don't know if they get in the federation side, they become actually less connected with the players. They actually get absolved, like absorbed, or should I say, by the ownership. Like they become that side, and so they're like, it's odd that they think that that's going to resolve the issue. Now, this could be different from soccer federations around the world. I mean, you guys probably know more about that. When ex-players get involved, is it better communication with the players? Better,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think in theory you think it would be, and the players are going to think, oh, well, an ex-player is going to take our side and all these kind of things.
That's
but
not always
necessarily.
The case. No, because then that player sees that side of it, and they see they need to do in order to stay on that side of it.
It's like, if I put it another way, a lot of football clubs in the UK, they get fan representatives on the board. And then once the fans get on the board and they see that side of things, it's not always the kind of fan-friendly thing that the fans think it's going to be. And then they see the ins and outs, and then they go, well, you know what? I don't agree actually with what the fans are wanting. So it doesn't always work in that way, Steve, as you say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what would you like to see changed, both of you?
I just think
more transparency, more openness,
transparency, openness, whatever you want to say. But I think they need to, like, if something comes like this in there, obviously have like a small group of people on the CSA side of it that can come in there and fix the problem. Don't rely on a Dr. Nick and Earl. My name is Earl, or whatever you want to call them. Don't rely on those guys to be the solvers. They need a small group, maybe a group of 3, that can go in and talk to the players and know how to talk to the players.
A committee, almost.
Yeah, not a. I wouldn't even say a committee, just because that does have a negative connotation. But definitely like a group of people, and it doesn't have to be. It could be somebody in marketing. It could be somebody in a different part of the CSA that can come in there. They might not even be part of the CSA. They might be like volunteers, and they don't do it. They just come in when an issue comes up. So they're almost like a third party, kind of a middleman or something like that. So that's maybe something they need. I've always thought that whenever you have ownership dealing directly with players, and I'm saying ownership, but it really is federation.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work because they're on opposite sides. You need somebody in the middle to mediate the issue, and having that available at a moment's notice is probably a good thing.
The players have to get union representation.
Oh, for sure.
And that's a thing as well.
that's probably the bigger change that I would want, in more than what's changing in the CSA, because I have no confidence that anything will change in the CSA. Or like I've always wanted changes in the past, so I don't know how many changes are going to happen in the new future.
Yeah, and with the World Cup coming up, there's going to be a lot of folk, like if they want to streamline positions or get rid of people, there's going to be a lot of folk fighting against that because they obviously want to be involved in this coming up.
That's
Although
what I'm saying.
People could be moving on to World Cup bid side of things as well, and that's allows younger people to come in.
That's why I don't like what I said before. I don't think anything was going to change up to this World Cup. I don't think they're going to get anything different from what they were being offered before. Maybe it gets a slightly better, but I don't think it's going to be a drastic change.
Zach, what would you like to see change in Canadian soccer?
This could be an extra podcast, by the way, what Zach wants to change.
Yeah. I agree with you guys.
Remembering that Steve has to get to bed at some point.
Yeah. I agree with you guys when it comes to transparency. It would be nice for us to know some more of the details and not just details, but I guess also the rationale behind some of these decisions. I think from the player side, I think too, I would like to see in this particular instance them maybe rescind some of their requests. And I don't know how much of it was just posturing, but I think
you always go in high, expecting to come down, I guess.
But just even the whole, like for me, one of the things that was hard was just like hey, we expect our family to be flown there and stuff. I don't think that's a bad ideal, but I don't think it's where the federation is at. And I think, like we said before, you can't compare what your teammates at your European club are getting.
It's also not a holiday; you're there to work.
Yeah.
Because
I think the idea
look
of
at other camps, it's like the wives and girlfriends and family are kept well away from the players for a large chunk.
Yeah, depending on the federation, for sure. I think in the modern era, Michael, I think the thought is knowing your family's there gives you more peace of mind and blah blah blah. Whatever. There's a different way to look at it, but whatever. So I'd like to see maybe some of those things. Maybe some of their expectations to be not I was going to say mellowed, but maybe more in line with reality for where the federation is at. I think also the more representation thing, like you guys are saying, more like actually like football people, former players, former coaches being involved, if they can facilitate that or mandate that or whatever, I think that would be very helpful. And I think that could help ease some of this some of the issues that they've had, in the last couple of weeks. I mean, what else? I think it's hard here because this whole conversation is a part of a bigger conversation we've had off and on over the years about one of the problems
we
with
can talk
football.
for hours on this.
Well, yeah, one of the problems with football in Canada is everyone's looking out for themselves.
Yep.
And so, again, that needs to change. But I think part of it that comes with strong leadership, and one of the knocks against the CSA is that their leadership it hasn't been the strongest, and so that's definitely an area they could grow in. And it's hard to see that growing with some of the people who are in the positions they are right now. But again, I also feel harsh, calling for someone's job, but yeah. It will be interesting to see if anyone does lose their job over like the Iran thing or whatever.
It's a volunteer position, so it's not like they get paid for it.
Right. Okay. Then.
Yeah.
Then there's definitely some people who should lose their job.
Does need to get someone needs to get to the bottom of that. They need to explain why that decision was made, etc., etc. I'll just finish this bit by we talk about dysfunction, and this is something that's been going on in BC soccer that folk may have missed during all this. There was a vote in BC soccer to change the voting structure within BC soccer to fall in line with what Canada soccer wants. So, without going into the long history, right now the voting structure in BC soccer is the adult leagues have a 50% vote, the youth leagues have a 50% vote. It was put to the membership to change that so that the adults would only have a 27% vote. Unsurprisingly, it got voted down because it was a 50-50 vote. So the adult leagues, it's like turkeys voting for Christmas. They're not going to go, yeah, we want to have less power in how BC soccer is run. So it was voted down. which goes against what Canada Soccer wanted. So now that was a democratic process. Now, rightly or wrongly, how the vote ended up, but now Canada Soccer, there could be sanctions for the adult leagues because they didn't do what Canada Soccer wanted. And that's not how you run an organisation. It's not dictatorial. You've got to put it to the members to have a vote. So all this kind of stuff needs to change. And sometimes Canadian soccer is just a giant mess. And there are folk that are out for self-interest, and there always will be. And you've got to kind of work out a way to get around that as well. But there's a lot more we could talk about. I think it would be fun to probably have a round table and get some interested parties maybe from around Canada on just to talk about these kind of things.
Yeah. I'm just still disappointed we didn't get to talk to Naveed Masinchi about the Iran game.
I know, Naveed was going to come on the show and give us the big scoop on Iran and all the stuff with that. So, I don't know, maybe for 2026, if we get them in our group, we'll get them on for that. But that is it for our Canadian soccer chat for now. But it's not it for the show. We're going to move away from the national team now, get back to our bread and butter, club football. We're going to be talking about the Whitecaps and what has been a very, very good couple of weeks for the Whitecaps. We'll be back chatting about that after this.
Hi, I'm Vanni Sartini, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part is another song from our new Artist of the Month here at AFTN for June from Brooklyn, Thick. That was their debut single from 2016 called Anymore. You can find all their stuff in all the usual places. Thick.bandcamp.com has a lot of their early stuff in there as well, which is kind of hard to get these days. Fantastic three-piece band. I think you'll really like them the more that you listen to them. I can't wait for them to come back and play here. They were fantastic live. They've got a kind of melodic punky sound, but they've also got quite a harder sound as well. So it's a nice little mix from the songs on their debut album, which came out last year, called 5 Years Behind. We'll have a lot more from them to come over this month. But for this part of the show, we're going to turn our attentions now to club football. We're going to be talking Whitecaps. There's been 2 matches played since our last show. We're not going to delve into all the ins and outs of it, so don't worry about that. We're just going to kind of talk more generally about the Whitecaps in this part. Because since the last show, the Whitecaps have taken 6 points out of 6 in MLS action. They beat KC in KC 1-0, thanks to a 27th minute Lucas Cavallini penalty. Then on Saturday, a dramatic last gasp 2-1 home win over Real Salt Lake. They've not been playing great, but they've been getting the results, which, whilst undermanned, is a tremendous stuff, really. 4 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw in the last 6 matches, Steve. The second best form in Major League Soccer over the last 6 games behind NYCFC. 9th best in MLS if you look over the last 8. Let's just look over the last 6. They've turned a corner, and it's a fun team to watch just now.
Yeah, they're kind of mirroring what they did last year in September or late August or whatever.
Without really firing on the cylinders that they did back then.
Yeah, so essentially, like, who knew that the Whitecaps would be the better run, organization in Vancouver last weekend,
Yes.
considering going into it. So for one weekend at least, essentially you're right. They're not playing great, but they're playing what they need to play. And sometimes you rely on luck on some of that stuff. And sometimes you rely on bad calls from the referee, but they've been plenty of times when they've been playing well and the referees have had bad calls against them. So it kind of evens out overall over a full season. So for me, yeah, I didn't see this kind of run based on what they were, what they were doing, but it's good to see that they're kind of turning it around.
Yeah.
10th like in the West now, Zach.
Yeah, like we talked about last time, it's I also did not see them going on the beginning of a run that looks like what they did last year. So very very surprised. And they can only play and beat what's in front of them. I mean,
Kansas City's in
Kansas City was right atrocious.
Now.
And RSL's playing.
RSL's one of the informed teams just now.
Yeah, but their goalie is Zach McMath.
Is it full time? Is he actually their starter, or was that just a one-off?
He's been the starter now. But I mean, the thing is, RSL for me were the better team, especially in the second half. And like after the game, Vanny said Whitecaps didn't deserve to win. But that's a mark of I was going to say it's a mark of a champion, but that's maybe getting a little bit far ahead of ourselves. But when you can get these results when you're not actually playing great, never mind all the players that they've been missing, I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, but they were the thing is that they, although except for, and I guess we'll talk about it later, but except for the great assist by Raposo on the RSL goal, which I think is going to be, if you want to make a new award up, it'll be the best assist to the opposition team. Godinho and Raposo are up for both.
Chested it down so well for the guy.
Yeah, but overall, except for that, they while RSL held the play, and obviously Cropper save, the RSL didn't there weren't that many dangerous opportunities. I felt. They
did look the better team.
Yeah, for sure.
But Whitecaps 10th in the West now, 1 point off the playoff places. There's just 3 points separating 7th to 12th, which is remarkable, but maybe not surprising because we know how tight the West is. All the Whitecaps needed to do was to keep in the playoff picture and keep in touch, really, until they got everyone healthy. So they've done that and more. And I think Vanni Sartini and all the players deserve a huge amount of credit for doing this. Just to chat briefly about the RSL game, won't talk about the KC game, but the game on Saturday, Caps took the lead in the first half, and I thought they edged the first half in many ways. Ranko Veselinovic, 31st minute, nice finish from him from close in.
Scored in the right goal for once.
Yeah. I'd said a couple of weeks ago in the show that I thought he had really kind of turned the corner and was one of the best players, and then he had a bad game and I was like, I've jinxed him, but he's come back good. I do like what I've seen from Ranko on the whole this year. Tristan Blackman for me was the best defender for the Whitecaps, but since he's gone out, Ranko's taken that mantle over. I just think he's been excellent.
And if they can get,
and he's dangerous set pieces.
And if they can get Blackman, Ranko, and Godoy, and they're all healthy, and they stay healthy for the rest of the year, that's a very decent back three.
Yeah,
very much so.
That's a MLS quality back three, which we haven't had for a lot of this season. Obviously, I mean the goal that Ranko got, it was nice all round because there was a little flick on from Flo, and we'll come to Flo shortly, just in general. And Jake Nerwinski, he's got a long throw. I didn't actually know he had that in his locker. Had I just forgotten that? Or have we not really seen that from him?
No, I don't recall it that much either. It was very West Knightish.
Yeah, it wasn't that long though, was it?
No, it wasn't that long because it had to be flicked. I think West Knight can throw. Could
It
do
was
those
still
longer.
a long throw though.
And he didn't flip over. and do the throws. So that was. Who was that? What team was that in Washington?
Crossfire.
Washington Crossfire.
Oh, it's amazing the little things that stick in your head.
Was it was it the other guy named Ben Fisk who did that?
Yes.
It was the other
Fisk.
It was the other Ben Fisk.
It was the other Ben Fisk.
Yes.
The lesser Ben Fisk.
Circus performer.
So yeah.
Just as an aside, during my commentary last night, one of the varsity players, Victor Shambusho, had got the ball on the edge of the box and he headed it about 4 or 5 times. And Gideon's like, I've never seen that before. I went, oh, I have. I saw a seal do that at SeaWorld once, which just set Gideon off.
What you call it? But the throw by Jake, like the thing is, it might not have been a very long throw, but it was an accurate throw because Flo knew exactly where he needed to be.
Yeah, it was a great little flick from him and then straight to Ranko. But it was the kind of goal that we've criticised as where's the marking? Yeah. That was horrible marking.
Oh, Zach McMath was livid at his defense.
Rightly so.
And rightly so.
Because he's seen that a few times on the other side of the pitch at BC Place. Talking of goalkeepers, second half, if Cody Cropper does not win our save of the year for that save, 51st minute, 52nd minute,
the header,
one-handed scoop off the goal line.
Yeah.
Wow, that was one hell of a save.
I mean, it was no Gordon Banks, but it was pretty good.
Well, he was no Pelé to be fair, Cordova. So,
yeah.
But no, that was a fantastic save. And then 25 seconds later, he's picking the ball out the back of the net.
Yeah, so maybe that save really, like, if he had let it in, maybe obviously the other goal doesn't happen, and it saves Raposo from being up for that award at the end of the year.
Yeah, I've liked Ryan Raposo. We were waxing lyrical about him on the last show about what he brings offensively to the team and his attitude. Defensively, though, he's shown a couple of times he's not great defensively.
I'm wondering if he had like a glitch in the head or something like that like he thought he was on the attack or something like that. Because he laid it really nicely down.
Oh, the ball. It was well chested down.
I'm assuming that he was trying, like he should have hit a little harder, so it got back to the goalie. I think that's what he was trying to do, so the goalie could scoop it up.
In all fairness, aside from Christian Gutierrez, are not all, and maybe I guess now Luis Martinez Luis Martins, are not all the players that Vanny uses as a wing back, like a square peg in a round hole?
Yeah,
not really. Godinho, I guess he would be a fullback.
Yeah,
more.
I mean Godinho
maybe
was a fullback.
And Javade Brown is definitely a fullback because he should be a center back, really. So there are a lot of,
like you think of like Christian Dahomey and stuff, and it's like
and
that's
Ryan
not their
Raposo.
strengths. Yeah,
I know Raposo's had some good contributions from there, but it was a glaring like, oh yeah, that's right, he's not great defensively from that position.
I mean, for me, Raposo, I was going to say unsung hero, but we've been singing his praises, but you know what I mean. He's like been one of those guys that's done a lot for the team this year, and it was I felt for him because he knew he'd done bad, and I don't think he should have been the one that was there anyway to deal with that, but that's a whole other side of things. But Cody Cropper, we talked about this on the last show, Steve. You weren't there. You were outside Uber Eats in Calgary. Glad I finally got that message for you to come home. But what have you made of Cropper? Do you see Hassel getting the starting jersey back? Because I don't.
Well, first of all, about the one thing I want to mention about Uber Eats, I can't stand those commercials. Because I see it on YouTube all the time, and it's the stupidest. When there's stupidity in commercials, I can't stand it. But talking about
don't start me on the come on one that's on One Soccer that you're lucky enough not to see.
The one that the thing about for me is always that I don't feel like players should lose their spot to an injury. I've always felt like that, and so but. If Cropper keeps playing like this, and who knows, I don't know how long Hassal's still going to be out for. If Cropper keeps playing like this, maybe at that point, if it's really extended and you don't want to like jinx the thing, if he's back sooner, then maybe he does. They maybe swap back and forth. But at this point, Cropper's probably got the spot. But it's going to be very tight depending on. Does anybody know when Hassal is scheduled?
We haven't had an update actually recently.
And mid to late June, I believe, was what they gave.
Yeah, but that could get extended. I think
because we haven't heard anything.
Because yes, the save was huge, but he's played smartly. But I feel like the defense in front of him is very good at this point. So I don't know, like they're playing better defensively, basically.
Hassao definitely had a worse defense in front of him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like he got no support at all and no attacking support, no goals coming in either. So in that case, it's kind of unfair to put it on him. But if Cropper keeps
I'm
picking
not
up
putting
saves,
it on him. I just feel that Cropper's been playing so well that I just don't think you can take that away from him.
I don't feel Cropper's done much more than what Hassal's done, other than that big, huge save for sure. But I just feel like it. I think Hassal could have made some of those stops as well that Cropper's made, because he wasn't under fire. Cropper's not been under fire since he's come in.
He hasn't had like tons of pressure to deal with, to be fair.
Now it could be also, this is the thing that we don't know and the coaches would know more, is he organizing the defense better than what Hassal is doing? And it's because of his experience. So if that's happening,
a communicator.
Yeah, if that's happening, which it's hard to tell unless you're right at the game. Maybe that's the reason he stays on.
Speaking of being at the game, Michael, you weren't at the Salt Lake match, right?
No, because I was still coming off COVID, I thought it wasn't a good idea to go.
They must want to keep you away as the streak keeps going.
I think that since I haven't been going, because I've missed some games with commentary and then with COVID, that they have done well. They have now moved me to the pre-game on the radio, because I've done 2 pre-game appearances now and they've won both games, whereas every time I go on after the game they've lost. So we're keeping that streak going. So I'm happy to go on pre-game if it's going to get the points. I think I get a championship ring at the end of the season because of that, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Justin Meram had equalised 25 seconds after that great save. RSL kind of bossed the game for me after that, but didn't matter. They didn't get the 3 points, didn't even get the 1 point, because Herrera brought down Louis Martins for a penalty, and it was a clear penalty. I thought it was a bit harsh actually for Herrera to get a red card for it.
I think it was a second yellow, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought it was...
No, but if it's a second yellow, then yeah, I think that's agreeable. But at that point, I don't think it makes a big difference, because the game was basically over.
I thought Martins did really well to get that penalty. That was your experienced head coming in.
Yeah.
Getting into the ball and getting the contact. I also, I think it was a fantastic play by Gold in order to Gold or whatever, in order to get that goal. The one underrated thing that I found, well, I like the run by Martins, obviously, but Caio Alexandre, who came into this game, I think it was his debut of the season, or maybe he played in. I can't remember now. Everything's melted together.
He's played for WFC too. It's all meshing into one now.
Yeah. So, but he also ran into the box, and that's something that we didn't see from the deep lying midfielders or whatever, and that caused the confusion for the RSL defenders. And I think that was very underrated, and that allowed Martins to have a little bit of a run into the box, forcing the RSL defender to dive down at the last second.
It was crazy how many Vancouver attackers there were compared to RSL defenders, aside from the wide open Martins.
Yep. Gold buries the penalty. It's a 2-1 win, another last gasp win. The fight that this team shows to the end of the games is incredible, and that's just that's all you can really ask from your players, is to give it all until the final whistle and not let your heads go down.
I disagree with what one of you said earlier, that I don't think these are pretty wins, or I don't think they're playing high quality football, but does it really matter when you keep on winning?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely not pretty football. But
no, none of us said that. I think
we're all saying that they're not playing great, but they're getting the wins.
Okay, sorry.
But that is the thing. It's like you get the wins how you can, and folk know that I would take a ground out 1-0 win any day of the week. It's all about getting the 3 points. But the great thing now from a Whitecaps point of view is they're getting their guys back. Kyle's back. And he played for WFC 2 on the Sunday as well to get some more minutes under his belt. So he's back now. He's looking good. You've got Tristan Blackman that was on the bench, so he's going to be close to coming back, and hopefully we will see that back 3 that we're wanting. Kubis, by the time he finishes up with Paraguay in this window, he'll be able to go, But I don't know that he'll be starting right away because he still has to obviously get the chemistry with the team and the new surroundings and everything like that. But we maybe don't need him right away either because we've got our new number 6, Florian Jungwirth, who has been outstanding for me over these last 2 games in the number 6 role.
It's probably the role that he likes to play, I think, too. Somebody was mentioning
it in Germany before.
In Germany,
yeah.
And I think that you're right, but I think overall for the long term, it probably won't work. I think it's better to get obviously Kubas and
I mean, Kubas is definitely a much better player, but I've really liked Flo back there.
I agree.
He's looked good against teams like Kansas City and now against Salt Lake. However, he will by better teams get caught out for pace.
Seattle and on Tuesday will be a test for him.
Yeah, he'll like the thing is that people have seen it now, and so people have like a film on it, and they'll be able to figure out what to break it down.
Because before it was a new thing. It's like, oh, how
I want to give a quick shout out to Tosin Ricketts, who I think leads possibly leads the league in OWGs now, offside winning goals. So I think he should be definitely a special shout out for him.
Steve,
I didn't know he'd run over that cat, but
Steve, I think he'll appreciate the fact that you're standing by him.
Yeah.
Hey, but he has been a revelation this year in some regards. I mean, we know what Toss can do because we've seen what he did when he was with TFC. We've seen it in the national team. But he looks lively, he looks hungry, and it's another little attacking threat that you can bring off the bench when you need it and get the odd start out of him as well. So, I mean, we've said where did the feel-good factor go before. It's back just now, and let's hope it does stay here. Seattle is next. They do have a number of players away on international duty. I think it'll be much the same squad-wise and starting 11-wise from Vanny. If we can get anything from that, a point I would take right now. I'm not confident we will. I think it might be a narrow defeat, maybe a 2-1 defeat or something, but get anything from this, and I think that would be huge. How do you guys see that one going?
Oh, I don't know. It's going to be odd because it's like, I don't even, but obviously Vancouver hasn't played for like more than a week, and then Seattle, I don't know, I can't recall the last time they played, so it's going to be a very weird game because everybody's probably going to be a little bit rusty,
game, of course, for the Champions League.
So I think both teams are. It's a hard game to predict because of that, because everybody's kind of been out of sorts for a bit. I think Vancouver's probably more ready to play in this game than Seattle, but Seattle's, they're a professional team. They got really solid players, and I think they'd be up for it for sure.
I think it's a home game for Seattle. I think Seattle has to be favored.
Oh, for sure.
But I remember, was it last year? I said the same thing. How can Seattle not win this kind of game? And then Vancouver goes out and I think tied one of them.
Yeah,
2-2 or something.
But a great performance.
My ultimate call in the game, I think, is going to be 2-0 Seattle.
I'll say 3-2 Seattle. What the hell?
We'll be back to chat about that one in the next show. Just to finish things off, Whitecaps chat. WFC2, want to talk about them. They're sitting 5th in the West, but they're only 3 points off first place. They had a PK win over SKC2 and then a 4-0 thumping on Sunday. Yeah, it was Sunday.
It was Sunday.
Real Monarchs.
And that was, I think, good job. Kudos to the Whitecaps organization for saying to people, if you had a ticket for the Panama game, just bring it to Swangard and you'll get in. I think, well done. Yeah,
that was nice. I'd also got the Altitude guys to do that as well because they had a League One game as well, and a few folk did turn up for that as well. So that's how it should be. It's like folk were pissed off; they wanted to see a game of football, and I saw some Canada jerseys and stuff in the crowd. First WFC2 home game of the season that I've had to miss because I was commentating at that Altitude game. I'm going to miss this Sunday's one as well, where they take on Tacoma Defiance at 2:00 because I'm going to be commentating again at that. But League One BC is in full flow just now, and I want to give a shout out to a number of different teams for various things here, because obviously we do commentary for 4 of them. But in the women's side, the Whitecaps women are looking phenomenal. Get out and watch these young players. a big bulk of this Whitecap squad, 10 of them, are going to be part of Canada's Under-17 World Cup team that's going to be playing in India in October, because you've got the girls that's come through the Whitecap system, but they've also added players from other Rex programs across Canada. So it's a very, very young team, but a very strong team. 4 wins out of 4, 11 goals for, only 2 conceded. They lead the way in 12 points. And it looks like it's a 3-horse race for the 2 that's going to be in the championship game in the women's side. You've got the Whitecaps on 12, you've got TSS Rovers on 9, and Varsity on 9, and they've only played 3 games so far as well. I've really enjoyed the action in the women's division. That's been fantastic. The men's side is wide open just now. It's going to be interesting to see who takes those spots up as well. You've got leading the way Varsity FC, 3 wins from 3, 9 points. TSS Rovers on 8 points from 4. The Whitecaps 7 from 4. And then Rivers, Highlanders are in the mix as well. There's been some great football played, so get out and watch this league. There's a lot of young talent there. They're putting themselves in the shop window. Hopefully you'll see a number of them go on and move into CPL. I've been enjoying doing the commentary with Gideon, and yeah, it's great. Get out and watch this. You can find all the action on league1bc.ca, and you can follow our weekly roundups as well. That is pretty much it for this episode of the show, but we can't go without bringing you this episode's wavelength. And I'm going back to the album that I'm slowly working my way through and bringing you some songs from 2020. It's by a band from England called Armchair Loyal. And this is the last track on their album, All You Need Is In Love. And it's Career Ending Injury.
He scored 20 goals a season every season. And did you see the penalty today? He hit that like you hit Ulrika, and I just couldn't believe it.
Thank you very much for your call. Chelsea is a...
Just don't know why for at least 3 seasons he's been ignoring Antti Niemi.
Antti Niemi?
Aye, I don't know why he doesn't get a game.
For Scotland?
Aye.
He's from Finland.
What?
He's Finnish, isn't he?
He's not finished. He's only 28.
That gentleman with the white hair is a Brighton season ticket holder. He also happens to be a local clergyman and father of the commentator.
Alan Casey of 13 Wolsey Avenue, Walthamstow, London E17, claims that when Willie Carr was booked, he was retaliating because Rodney Marsh, far from rubbing Carr's head in a sporting fashion as it seemed, actually twisted the Coventry player's ear.
I'm sorry, you can sit there and look and play with all your silly machines as much as you like. I'm manager of a football team, rather than an experienced manager. Yeah, if the boys haven't done enough, I'll whip them. I ain't whipping them for that tonight. Who won the man of the match award?
Dave Besant won.
Oh, sorry, so he must have played not bad then. Thank you very much, lads. See you later.
When you do that with footballers, like he said about Leeds, and when you do things like that about a man like Stuart Pearce, I've kept really quiet, but I'll tell you something. He went down in my face when he said that. We have not resorted to that, but I'll tell you, you can tell him now if you're watching it, we're still fighting for this title, and he's got to go to Middlesbrough and get something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we can get it. Love it.
We've often paid tribute in the past to our eagle-eyed young viewers, and Ian Belfield of 30 Albert Road, Rayleigh in Essex, is another of them. He noticed that Fulham's Peter Marinello was wearing his shorts back to front against Sunderland last week. Was it so they couldn't tell whether he was coming or going, asked Ian.
The craze started here with a player called Imre Berardi. Supporters started calling him Imre Banana.
Some wag in the crowd one day called him Imre Banana, and somebody just brought a banana in and it's just spread from there as far as I remember.
That wasn't good enough by any manner of means. Not good enough against mediocre opposition. Don't care which way you look at it. Shrewsbury were 10 times the side they are, right? And they've had too much of the ball. No mistakes. Don't be the one that drops the across the goal. Right? Just make sure you don't give it away. Off.
21 players reached for their handbags.
For Newcastle United, you know what? Quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that had to realise how good he was.
Oh, you're missing it. You're missing it clearly, based on what you got now.
God, scored so many goals.
Yes, you've got to, I suppose, admire Villa's resilience in the end to take that amount of punishment and still somehow snatch the game. But it was a brilliant goal, absolutely fantastic goal that ended up as being the winning goal of the game.
Yeah, well, you've done well to hold your concentration there because a few yobs are throwing stones at the window, but you've got to expect it sometimes. Alan?
Yeah. I love that track. It's just sampling various call-ins that's been on radio shows about football in the UK, and some commentators talking and some managers post-game, and it includes one of my favourite bits that I'd forgotten all about, probably going back maybe 5 or 6 years now. It was on a Scottish football phone-in, and the guy's calling about Anton Yemi, who was the Rangers goalkeeper at the time, and he's like, I don't understand why he's been overlooked for Scotland for these past 3 seasons. And the guy's like,
he's Finnish.
Yemi. And he's like, yeah. He's like, he's from Finland. He's like, what? And he's like, he's Finnish. He's not finished. He's only 28. Quality calling. I still don't know if that was a wind-up or if that was a genuine call. But that was sampled there in that track. It's a great track there. Armchair Loyal. All You Need Is in Love is their album. You can find them on Bandcamp. Check it out. We've played you 4 songs, I think, from the album so far. It's a 16-track album. Each one's a banger, as I believe the kids might say these days.
Now I can see your inspiration for the Jamaican line that you always give.
Yes, Finnish, Jamaican, lots of good jokes there. But that is it for this episode of the AFTN Soccer Show. It's been good to be back. I've got through it with only coughing a couple of times. That's why it's good to have a mute button. Great to have the 3 of us back as well, because Steve's missed a couple of shows as well because he hadn't been well and then was on assignment for us. Just before we go, any final thoughts, anything you've learned this week? Where can folk find you online, Steve?
You can find me on Twitter at Whitecaps Beat. Not really what I learned, but just a reminder that, My Name is Earl is a solid show, and it was disappointing to see it cancelled.
Zach, any final thoughts from yourself?
You can find me on Twitter at ZacharyAM, and a significant part of life is about reconciliation and restoration, and my hope is that we can see that lived out, even though we've had to walk through a tough week or two with the Canadian Soccer Association and the men's squad. For all my criticisms or concerns about how the men have approached things, these are players I love and I'm so excited about and so thankful for the massive steps they've taken this program in. And so, I hope things will be able to move forward. And I also, my heart goes out to John Herdman and his coaching staff and all these people who are even some of the people behind the scenes at the CSA who, have a job to do, and their
emails.
Their world got turned upside down in the last week, and I just hope all these people can move forward, because there's a lot of hardworking people that had a very difficult week. And anyways, I'm looking forward to getting on the other side of this and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the feel-good factor had been just so
too good to be true.
Yeah, and it's tough when it just all looks about money, but it's a lot more. It goes a lot deeper than that, and I think a lot of folk had just focused on the monetary side. There needs to be change. I hope there is. That's one of the things that I take forward from the past week or so. I'm Michael McCall. You can follow me on Twitter at AFTN Canada, and we do our stuff aftn.ca. I guess my biggest thing that I've learned over the past week or so is not to get your hopes up. Scotland dashed mine. Was so sure we were going to the World Cup. They didn't deserve to go. They played absolutely terrible against Ukraine. And then it was gutted that Ukraine didn't get there after Wales beat them as well. So it was just don't get hopes up in football. Just enjoy the ride, take the highs, take the lows. In football, most of the time, it's going to be lows as opposed to highs, unless you're one of these people like Zach that just jumps on the bandwagon of Bayern Munich and just follows these big teams.
Yeah, they always fire their coaches
unnecessarily. But that is it for this episode of the show. We will be back soon. Shouldn't be any more COVID. You can't get it twice in a month, can you? I guess we'll find out. But we will be back soon. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care. Allez le Rouge and Mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.